So, Evan Markey, congratulations. You were appointed District Manager of Chico Water Service just in March.
Yes.
And you,
Actually, I think it was May, but
May.
close. Yeah.
And you've been District Manager other places, but do you live in Chico?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I was born and raised here in Chico. I graduated from PV back in '99, and then I started at Cal Water in Chico in 2008, and kind of climbed through the ranks here. And then in 2017, I became district manager of our Willows, Marysville, and Redwood Valley districts. Our Redwood Valley is a collection of small services over in Lake, Sonoma, and Marin counties. So I've been doing that until in August of 2021, I came over back to Chico on an interim basis, and then it became permanent in May.
I think psychology majors will be interested to know that you majored in psych at UC Santa Barbara. So why did you decide on psych, and how did you transition from a really different field to water management?
Yeah, psychology was just something, I took a couple classes my freshman year. I actually spent my freshman year at Chico State. And I took a couple classes there, and I just loved it. It was really interesting to me, and I got a lot out of the classes, and I didn't really have a major defined, so that was an area I thought, I might as well pursue this. And kept through and ended up getting my degree in psychology. I got a minor in English at UC Santa Barbara. And then when I got towards the end and was thinking about pursuing it further, it was a little daunting. I wasn't, sure exactly what I wanted to do in that field. And I had a background in construction. My dad's a local contractor here. Spent a lot of time working with him and for him growing up. And so naturally just kind of slid back into that when I graduated college and moved back up to Chico. And then started my career at Cal Water in 2008 after a lot of the building was kind of drying up back then. While I didn't actually use that degree, in my professional career, I think it has been very beneficial.
As a manager, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think it's definitely come in handy. I've drawn on that fairly regularly in the course of my career.
And your family probably appreciates that you know how to understand feelings and talk about feelings.
Yes, my wife definitely does. Yeah, my kids as well. Yeah.
Good. So we just assume that we turn on the tap, we turn on the shower, we're going to get water. So my question is, where does it come from? And then how is it treated? And then how does it get to my tap?
Yeah. So here in Chico, we are 100% groundwater. So we have 55 active wells spread throughout the community that, some of them run 24/7, 365 days a year. Some of them are more for seasonal demand or as a backup in case there's a fire and we need to really up our production. But yeah, our water comes from a combination of all of those sources. And by and large, we have really good water quality. We do have some areas where there are contaminants that we treat out. We have 4 sites where we use granular activated carbon filtering to treat out, and then, there's a lot of scientific names for all the different chemicals that we're treating or the contaminants that we're treating out and removing. But a lot of them come from old industrial practices, dry cleaners. Some of the newer ones that are emerging in the last few years of PFOS, PFOA, you probably hear a lot about in the news. Those are from all kinds of different industrial practices, Teflon, fire retardants. They're in a lot of different products that are made. Even your clothes that you wear have these chemicals in them. So we're in the process of installing treatment on another well this year and another one the year after that for those PFOA or PFOS chemicals to remove those. And then as they set new maximum contaminant limits for new emerging contaminants, then we will, of course, where we have wells that are impacted, we will implement those. It's a little different for us because every project that we undertake has to be approved by the California Public Utilities Commission. So, and we do that, it's a forward-looking process. So we propose a three years worth of projects and then we go through and there's kind of a negotiation and a vetting process for all those different projects. And then once approved, we can move forward and start implementing them, putting them, shovels in the ground and move forward. So we're in various stages of those process with more treatment for some of our sites over the next few years.
Are all those wells on the areas you see around town that are just kind of they're raw ground with maybe like a little building that says cow water? Is all the wells are in those sites?
Yeah, primarily. Yeah. We actually run a few state-owned wells as well, to clean up some of those contaminants that we were just talking about. There's a well site at the back of the Chico Cemetery, back tucked in behind Chico Junior High, where we have a treatment facility. And there's 4 state-owned wells that actually feed into that, and then we use that water. So we have a contract with the Department of Toxic Substance Control to run those to help clean up and alleviate the contamination that's in those plumes. But by and large, yes, they are all our pump stations spread around town that you'll see that have our signage. Most of them are the cinder block buildings or some of the older buildings that were built in the 50s, 60s.
And does the water from the wells come from the aquifer? Is there there's a name for that aquifer, or is it various ones?
Yeah, it's all the Tuscan aquifer, and which has a pretty wide footprint, And I don't know if you're following the sustainable groundwater management activity that's going on there's the Vina Subbasin, which is the city of Chico, city of Durham, and then the Rock Creek Reclamation District have formed used a joint powers agreement to form this agency. And then we serve as as part of the stakeholder advisory committee that gives input to the decision makers on that board. But yeah, we are all pulling out of the same aquifer, and for the Vina Subbasin portion of that aquifer, the consumption here in Chico accounts for roughly 14% of the total draw in that aquifer, the rest of it primarily being agriculture. De minimis use for people on private wells, but by and large, it's primarily agriculture.
How deep is that aquifer?
That's a great question. I hesitate to say exactly how deep. I'm not a hydrogeologist, but I can say that our wells are generally in the range of 300 to 600 feet deep, which is a lot deeper than a normal domestic well. Where here, some of the folks in the community are having issues with their own domestic wells.
Yeah.
Normally, they're experiencing issues if they're less than 100 feet. And we have different screens on those wells where we can pump from different levels. And so we're generally not pumping from anything shallower than 150 to 200 feet normally. But yeah, it is. Our wells are a lot deeper than the standard domestic wells that are in the area.
And does the aquifer come from rainwater that just percolates down, or is it fed by underground rivers from the mountains, or what feeds the aquifer?
A little bit of both. Yeah, it's a lot of the water coming down the foothills that contributes to that recharge. Obviously, rain, even agricultural irrigation helps with the recharge. So there's a lot of different areas where we get that recharge and that refilling of the groundwater, but all of those play in.
I don't understand how, if I water my garden or the orchard behind me, how can that water be enough volume to percolate 200 feet deep?
I think it has to. Well, there's different levels of the aquifer. When we're talking about recharge, like I said, I'm not a hydrogeologist. I may get some things wrong here, but I think anything that's percolating down, it's not getting pulled up by the plants and reused with evapotranspiration. It's not just what's the word I'm looking for? Evaporating. While it's still on the ground. Anything that makes it down is eventually going to percolate down into the deeper aquifer.
Wow.
If there's no confining layers within the aquifer, because there's a lot of it's not just one size fits all in the aquifer. There's a lot of areas where there's different water levels, different depths to the water table, different types of geologic formations that can either make it more permeable or less permeable. So there's a lot of variability throughout the subbasin.
And how this 3-year drought that we've experienced, is that like a little tiny blip on the scope of this aquifer, or are people worried that the aquifer will dry up? I know Central Valley, they don't have water.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the 20-year trends, it really is kind of a blip. However, it is something that we really want to be careful with. So we're seeing our average depth, to groundwater down about 8 or 9 feet over where it was 3 years ago. But if you look at the 20-year average, that's kind of within the normal ebb and flow. However, one of the first things that can be impacted when those groundwater levels start to really decline is groundwater-dependent ecosystems. So while it may not impact our ability to draw and provide water to the community, so those ecosystems can suffer. And I think that's the real kind of first warning sign.
Like what? What ecosystems?
Wetlands, just areas that different species, rely on that groundwater, and the trees and everything that comes with that, all the insects and the whole, biodiversity of those ecosystems, that how that all plays in. So I think, the tree health is really a good kind of defining factor that you can look at pretty easily and say, okay, we might be starting to have an issue here.
Do you have any sense of, like, the big tall trees, how far their roots go? That's not really your field, but how far can the tree roots go to get water when they're not getting rain?
So I'd say for normally anything that isn't like a redwood or a conifer type tree, you look at the tree itself, and it's kind of a mirror image underground. So if it's 30 feet tall, it's probably going through, the root system looks very similar to the branches and foliage. However, the redwoods, they get a lot more of their moisture from the atmosphere. And so that root system might not be quite as expansive or as strong. That's why you'll notice the redwoods suffering probably earlier than maybe an oak tree or an almond tree or some of the other trees that we have around.
That's why the redwoods like the fog along the coast, because they get water from that. Oh, that's really interesting. So at this point, people aren't worried about the depth and volume of our aquifer at this point.
Well, I wouldn't say people aren't worried. I think, and this is something that we've had a lot of back and forth within the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, is what should those kind of minimum and maximum thresholds be set at? What level should we operate in? And it's, there's a lot of different opinions out there, and some of it gets very political, and the last thing I want to do is get into the politics side of it here, but there's a lot of smart people looking at it, but they're coming from different perspectives. Is it, business, agricultural use? Is it trying to provide water for a community, or should we really be focusing on the most at-risk parts, the domestic well users with shallow wells, the groundwater-dependent ecosystems, anything that could have a negative impact to water quality if we were to further deplete the aquifer? A good example of that is for basins that are along the coast, and if they keep lowering their groundwater levels, then you can get saltwater intrusion coming from the ocean. So we don't have that problem here, but there are other water quality concerns that can come in with nitrates if you keep lowering those groundwater levels.
So what's happening in the Central Valley? Why are they in such dire circumstances?
I think it has to do with a lack of storage that they've had historically within their aquifers, and then depletion of the. If you can lose permanent underground storage with lowering. What's the word I'm looking for here? When the groundwater levels continue to lower, you'll get actual lowering of the ground levels. And there's a term for it that is slipping my mind right now.
Let's call it sinkage.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get lowering levels, and what that does is where the actual geological formations will compress, and there's less room for storage long term in those formations. So I think that has to do with it. I know that there's a lot of once again, there's a lot of politics involved with the Central Valley and how they use their water, whether it's agricultural or for human consumption or the environmental side of it. But I think there's a lot of things that come into play there. But They don't have a lot of the natural, storage that we have up here in our aquifer, and so they're heavily reliant on groundwater coming down from the north and from the east. When that's not available, they're really the first ones that are impacted, and they're impacted very heavily.
Are you saying their aquifer is just has less capacity for storage than ours? It's like smaller?
I don't have the information to really say one way or the other. I know there have been some banking projects where they're trying to take surface water and put it in the ground and bank, but there's a lot of political issues with that as well, legal issues, because who owns that water once it's banked. But I can't speak to whether their groundwater aquifers are actually smaller or have less storage. I just think they haven't been recharged to the same level that ours have because of the natural recharge that happens here.
Got it. I got a notice from Cal Water that said I should only water 2 days a week. What kind of? But no one's checking to make sure that I'm only watering 2 days. What's that all about?
So we moved to stage 2 of our water shortage contingency plan back on May 22nd, and that was mandated from the governor that all water agencies in California move to stage 2 of their water shortage contingency plan. So that has a lot of different requirements that come with it. One of those is the watering days, as you mentioned. So depending on your address, you're only supposed to water on Tuesday or Saturday or Wednesday and Sunday. No watering between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. So when we're watering, we're not losing all that water to evaporation. The plants are really getting the full benefit of it. Some other ones like not washing your car without a shut-off nozzle. And there are also some exemptions. So you can use drip irrigation whenever you like. You can water with a hose as long as it does have a shut-off nozzle whenever you like. So there are some exemptions from those restrictions. But yeah, everything that we've been communicating about to our customers has been, just trying to make them aware of what those restrictions are, what kind of programs we offer to help them conserve in their home. We have a wide array of rebate programs. We have a turf removal if you replace it with drought-tolerant landscaping program.
I called about that, and they never came.
Oh, really? I know we've been getting a lot of requests. So since we opened that program back in September of 21, we've received, last time I checked a couple weeks ago, it was 114 applications just here in Chico. And I know it's up here, we have one conservation coordinator that's managing that program. So he's probably a little overwhelmed, but I can make sure that he gets back to you on that because it is a really good program.
What do they replace the turf with?
So we have a list of like over 3,000 native plants that you can use, and you have to put like 50% of what you remove, you have to put back with drought-tolerant landscaping. So you can't just put base rock over your whole yard, or you can't just pave it, because we really want to make sure that we're maintaining those the ecosystems that aren't going to have a negative impact to the natural wildlife if we're just paving, a yard or putting AstroTurf or whatever it is. So yeah, we've done a lot of work and worked with some consultants to compile a list of drought-tolerant landscaping that qualifies, and that really, once you water them for a few months, get everything set and taken, it's all taken hold, really requires little to no water or irrigation water at all. It just survives on the natural precipitation. So.
What are some of the other rebates?
So we have rebates for high-efficiency clothes washers, high-efficiency toilets. We have rebates for high-efficiency sprinkler nozzles, smart irrigation controllers. So I would encourage everyone to go to our website, calwater.com/conservation, and there's a listing of all those. I think for the toilets, it's like $150 is what I'm thinking off the top of my head. I just replaced mine about a year ago and took advantage of the rebate program because I am a customer as well.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, it was over half of what the toilets cost. So, and I did the same thing when I replaced my washing machine 3 years ago. So, yeah, like I said, I would encourage everyone to take advantage of it. We also do have a really popular program, which is called our Smart Landscape Irrigation Tune-Up Program. I hope I didn't butcher that. It's a long one, but we contract with a company that will come out to your home, do an audit of your irrigation system, and they'll actually make suggestions and make repairs if there's stuff that they find that they can get in there and repair. They'll replace your irrigation controller with a smart irrigation controller at no cost. So it's a wonderful program. We've gotten great feedback on it.
What's
from
the name of
customers.
it again?
It's this. I think it's the Smart Landscape Irrigation Tune-Up Program.
That's cool. I have
Yeah.
20 fruit trees, so my ears are perking up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned contaminants, and I know there was like a dry cleaning facility on Fifth Street. I don't think of Chico as industrial. I mean, there's some industrial places by the airport, but where have been the main sources of is it chemical fertilizers, or what is it?
Mostly, I think most of the ones that we are actively working to clean up now in partnership with the Department of Toxic Substance Control has been dry cleaners, back from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. But like I said, I think some of the newer ones, it's kind of weird because we've been testing for the PFOS and PFOA and trying to do a heat map of where we've gotten hits. And there's not one enterprise that we can really pinpoint and say, okay, this is
A hot spot.
what may be contributing to that. Yeah, it's just kind of spread out. So I think some of these newer chemicals, it's harder to kind of put your finger on, but we are going through and trying to work with the manufacturer of those chemicals to give money, basically, to fund those ongoing cleanup efforts. So those, I don't want to get into too much detail of what we're doing, but those efforts are ongoing.
All my sewage goes into a septic tank, and then it leaches out into the ground, and then that goes to the aquifer. Is that accurate? I mean, I feel more virtuous about that than sewage that goes to the treatment plant out on River Road.
It is accurate, and those can cause problems with nitrates down the line, the septic systems. And so that's why I know about 5 years the city got a bunch of money from the state to convert and expand their sewer or their wastewater collection system to get people off septic and onto the city sewer, because once that water does get out to the city's wastewater plant, they do clean it, and I think they go to secondary treatment to where it's not fit for public consumption, but it can be used for irrigation. I believe right now most of that water goes back into the Sacramento River. So they do a great job of cleaning it up and going through the proper steps to make sure that water has been treated to the requirements of the state.
Yeah, are nitrates come from feces, or what's the source of the nitrates?
Yeah, I think once again, I'm not a scientist, but I think it's a combination of all that human waste. I think it all has some nitrates in it, and they do leach down and can have a negative impact to water quality in the aquifer.
Oh yeah, a friend of mine was making a compost pile in another state, and he used urine for the nitrate. I mean, he just would add his liquid to the that's interesting. So the water that we drink, how often is it tested for chemicals? Do you put in what's the thing that people put on their teeth that was causing controversy?
Fluoride. No, so in Chico we don't add fluoride. The only thing that we add is chlorine, and that's simply to disinfect and make sure that not only when we put it into the system, the pipes, but the whole life of that it's in those pipes before it's finds its way out of a tap or out of a fire hydrant, that it's maintaining a residual of chlorine to ensure that nothing grows in it, that we don't have any bacteria, we don't have anything that's going to cause a negative health impact to our customers, and we check those residuals daily at every pump station. We take weekly bacteriological samples at a number of sites. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say around 40 or 50. I don't know exactly, but we take bacteriological samples weekly, and anytime we have anything that looks in any way off, we obviously address that problem. Now, with that said, we have had 100% compliance for all our water quality sampling over the last 10 years. It's we've never been out of compliance. So rest assured that the water that is coming to you in your tap is safe to drink. We're testing for not only the chemicals or contaminants that we're required to test for. Every 3 years, we work with the state and test for, it's called UCMR, it's the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Program, where we're testing for new chemicals that they're discovering to see what kind of impact those may have as MCLs get set here. So we're really taking a proactive kind of long-term approach to ensuring that we have safe and reliable drinking water.
How long does it take for the chlorine to evaporate, which I'm assuming it does? I'm thinking of my fishbowl.
Yeah, it really depends on the conditions. So the warmer the water is, the quicker that chlorine will dissipate. So obviously, if it's colder, it will maintain that residual longer. What's in the water, the mineral content, there's a lot of different factors. So it's hard to say, how long, if you just pour a glass of water, how long will that chlorine, stay in there? But generally we try to maintain as low of a residual as possible. Ours is usually between 0.5 and 0.7, where we're allowed to go up to 4.0. But there's taste and odor issues that come with that. People really don't like the smell and the taste of chlorine. So we try to keep it as low as possible while ensuring that we have a safe residual for our distribution system.
So if I want to put more water in my fishbowl, how long should I let it sit just to be safe that I'm not giving chlorine to my fish?
I don't think I can tell you because I don't want to give you the wrong impression and have something bad happen with your fish. But I know there are chemicals like dechlor chemicals that you can use. I think you can get from the pet store.
Yeah, they are.
Chlorine. And we actually use very similar stuff when we have an unplanned discharge or a planned discharge if we have to flush water for a new main going in or there's a leak. Before that water hits a receiving water body like Little Chico Creek, Big Chico Creek, Comanche Creek, we do everything we can to ensure that we are dechlorinating that water before it goes in, and so it doesn't have any negative impact on the fish or the wildlife in the area.
Right. You mentioned the Vina substation, the board that got a lot of controversy, and I don't remember why. Can you give us a little background on that water board?
Yeah, so the Vina Groundwater Agency, like I said, it's made up of the city of Chico, Butte County, and the city of Durham, and then Rock Creek Reclamation District. So when they submitted their draft plan back in late January, there were some folks from the community, a few different organizations that actually sued the groundwater agency, stating that there's a bunch of different reasons for why they didn't feel that the plan was up to snuff. A lot of them had to do with the minimum objectives and the measurable thresholds for when actions would need to go into place. And they didn't feel it was stringent enough. So, I can't speak. I'm actually not even involved in those conversations. I'm just on the stakeholder advisory committee. But there is some folks from the community that don't feel it was stringent enough. And so they're working through that legal process now. That said, the Department of Water Resources, who has the authority, or the State Water Resources Control Board, who has the authority to either approve or deny those plans, has not even reviewed it yet. They received it in January. We don't expect a response on the plan for possibly another year.
Wow.
So it's kind of a new world. This is all new legislation that was put into place about 5 years ago, and there's not a lot of background on how to litigate these matters because it's a new process. So it's very interesting, to be a fly on the wall and see how it all plays out.
So I don't understand how the board works. They set up a plan, and then does that dictate to Cal Water and Chico how much water you can distribute, or how you deal with contaminants, or what's their authority, and what are they interested in?
So their goal is to maintain sustainability in the basin. So I think the primary function is to look at the groundwater levels and set, okay, how low can these go before we have to implement some kind of project, if it's a recharge project or just education and conservation, or I think the last kind of place that anybody would want to go would be water budgets for, for Cal Water, for Durham Irrigation District, for, agricultural users. I don't think anybody really wants to go there. But there are basins throughout the state that have been adjudicated, a number of years ago, and basically everybody, here's your allotment. We don't want to get there, and I think that's kind of the point of Sigma, is to get that control out of the hands of the state and turn it over to local entities. And it takes a lot of coordination. It takes, communication. It takes a lot of bringing in all the parties that are impacted to get their input. And it's a long process. Like I said, these folks have been working on it for 5 years up here trying to put that plan together. And there's consultants involved. There's obviously lawyers involved. There's a lot of different people that have their input in these plans. But that's really the intent of the plan is, look at what those groundwater levels are, and then kind of put together some proposed management actions that we can take if we get below those levels and we need to take action that we can put into place, and not only figure out a way to implement them, but figure out how we're going to fund them. Is it going to be through a 218 process, or is there grants available, or are certain projects really only helping certain entities, and should they pay for more of it? So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and it's still ongoing.
As I remember, I think the controversy was who's on the board making these decisions, and that there's more like ag influence and power than there is the little suburban consumer.
Yeah, and so when the legislation came out back in 2014-15, the only entities that had the ability to declare themselves a GSA or groundwater sustainability agencies are those with either municipalities or those with public land use authority. So that precludes agencies like California Water Service. We're a privately owned utility. However, we are able to serve on these type of advisory committees. So that's why I think Rock Creek Reclamation District, Butte County, City of Chico, and Durham were the ones that decided, instead of trying to form their own agencies, they decided to form, get a joint powers agreement, form the Vine and Groundwater Sustainability Agency, because there has to be a comprehensive plan for the whole subbase. Otherwise, they would all have to work independently, but still work together to come up with a plan that works for everybody. So I think it was smart to do this. Now, going back to the politics of who's on the board. I wasn't here in Chico when that was going on. I was, as we talked about, I was overseeing those other districts, so I don't have a lot of background on that. But I do know that there has been a little bit of heartburn that maybe there is more ag involvement on the board, but that's the nature of water. Right? There's a lot of different people involved, a lot of different entities and agencies that should be involved in the decision-making process. And when you have that wide array of folks with different viewpoints, you're not always going to get along or come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, if a scarce resource, then we're fighting over our piece of the pie. Could you explain to us how a public utility works? Because like PG&E makes profit. They have stockholders, and is Cal Water like that, and then how is a utility different than like a regular for-profit corporation?
Yeah, so we have a similar business model as PG&E. We are publicly or privately owned, publicly traded corporation. We operate in California, Hawaii, New Mexico, Washington State, and most recently Texas. So we are governed by the Public Utilities Commission. So they basically determine what our rates can be, what projects we can undertake. We actually have a somewhat different business model. We have decoupled our rates from sales. So what that means is we present a sales forecast for the next 3 years to the Public Utilities Commission. And if we sell more water than we thought we would, there's a mechanism, it's called our water rate adjustment mechanism, that will actually come back and give customers credit. So we can't earn more than we forecasted, and vice versa. If we sold less, that mechanism will kick in, and there will be a surcharge on customers' bills, because we have a very high fixed cost in our operations. If people are using less water, we still have to take all the water quality samples. We still have to read all the meters. Our cost doesn't really drop. So that kind of it separates our profits from the sales, which is great for this resource of water because we're trying so hard to promote conservation. And so, what we are allowed, how we make our profit is we negotiate every 3 years a rate of return on our capital investment. So for all the main that we replace, if we build a new storage tank, if we build a new pump station, then we are allowed a rate of return on that investment. And so that's where our profit comes from, and that's where our shareholders see the benefit.
So the profit comes not from the water, but from the kind of the infrastructure that around the water that contains the water.
Exactly, and that's why we feel that this is a good business model, because you look at these communities that are struggling with infrastructure. I think Flint, Michigan is obviously the greatest example.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not trying to get into the pros and cons of a publicly owned versus privately owned, but if you find yourself in that situation where you have a city council or a board that is not willing to commit to those rate increases that you need to fund capital investment, then your infrastructure deteriorates and you have a public health crisis. We are committed to improving and maintaining our infrastructure to ensure that we never find ourselves in that place. Our top priority is our customers' safety and health. And our commitment to upgrading and improving our infrastructure is the primary vehicle to do so.
Flint, the problem was lead in the pipes. What are Cal Water's pipes made of?
So we don't have any lead service. We actually just went through and did a comprehensive investigation that was mandated by the state to confirm we do not have any lead service lines in Chico. We do every couple of years we do lead and copper sampling, where we actually drop water bottles off at customers' homes that fit the criteria if they were built before I might get the exact requirements wrong, but before 1989. So they may have lead or copper plumbing in their own homes. So we go out and we do a first draw sample off of their plumbing. So it's been sitting overnight, make sure that our water isn't attacking the lead and copper fixtures and leaching out chemicals that can be harmful. And if we are, if that is the case, then we can work with the customer to get those problems with their plumbing removed. So, we have a very robust program to make sure that the lead and copper plumbing, even on the customer side, is being tested regularly, and we're not, none of our customers are seeing any negative impacts from that. Now, obviously, once it goes past the meter, that's the customer's infrastructure. We don't own it, we don't maintain it. However, if we're made aware of a problem, we're going to do everything we can to put those customers in touch with the right resources and assist them with getting those problems taken care of.
My house and the ones I live in a cul-de-sac off of Oak Park, and these houses were all made in 1970, and I think the pipes are lead. So what should we do about it?
Yeah, well, actually, I can. If you want to send me your address, what we can do is see if next time we roll through that program. I think we just did it last year, so it should be coming up in 2023. If we can look at your home and see if they fit the criteria for the program, we can absolutely get you and your neighbors involved. It's no cost to the customer.
There's two of the cul-de-sacs on Ranchita Way and La Placida that were built in 1970. So, okay. I'll email you the address. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great. So, when Cal Water is doing service in Texas, they don't call themselves Cal Water, do they?
No, it's Texas Water Service. So the other states are under, we have the California Water Service, which is our California operations, and we have the California Water Service Group, which also includes Washington Water Service, Hawaii Water Service, New Mexico Water Service. And so, California is by and large the largest portion of that. We serve over 2 million customers here in California. I think Washington and then Hawaii are probably the next largest, and then New Mexico's relatively small. However, while they are under the umbrella of the California Water Service Group, none of our rates that are set here in California are impacted by them. They don't, it's not like people here in California are paying for what goes on in Washington. It's all strictly separated and siloed so that our customers aren't bearing the burden of any of our operations in any other states.
So, in terms of your job now as district manager, how do you, like, if you were going to make a pie of how you spend your time, how much is in the field, how much is at the desk, how much is talking to customers, or how does this job occupy you?
Yeah, I don't get out in the field as much as I would like, especially with kind of the post-COVID transition to Zoom meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a lot easier, which is nice. But there is a lot of those meetings that pop up where you're thinking this probably could have just been an email. But no, I'd say probably half of my day is spent on meetings either internally or with community partners. We try to be very involved with the chamber, with the Downtown Chico Business Association, with Rotary, the Chat organization. I don't know if you're aware of them. They're homeless advocacy group. The Jesus Center, who are our new neighbors over here with the pallet shelter. So, I try to devote at least 30 to 40% of my day to making sure that I'm getting out there talking with our customers, making sure that, they understand what we're trying to do, especially if we have upcoming infrastructure projects, dealing with the different regulatory agencies, whether it's the city of Chico or Butte County or the Department of Drinking Water, State Water Resources Control Board, Central Valley Flood Protection Board. We have a project coming up where we're going to be connecting a new line under Little Chico Creek over at Notre Dame to increase the reliability for our firefighting efforts over there. And so just working with those different regulatory agencies, making sure we have all the proper permits in order before we start a job, and just, making sure that we're a good community partner. We've been in Chico since 1926. This was one of our first districts. And we really pride ourselves on the service that we provide to this community. I think you might hear people complain about our rates or the conservation efforts that we're asking our customers to undertake. I don't think you'll ever hear a customer complain that we do not provide good customer service, and that's something we really pride ourselves on. Our folks are local. You call, you get a local employee answering the phone, and we'll be out there within an hour to address your issue. So that's something that we really, really take pride in, and we want to continue. We don't, the last thing we want is for folks to think we're just this big, corporate entity that has come in, 100 years ago and taken over our water, and we don't care what our customers think. That could not be further from the truth.
Yeah, it's true, because I want to do a series on our infrastructure, so I tried to talk to PG&E to ask them to do what you're doing. Couldn't get a person. Same with Comcast. So I can vouch for the fact that I did get a person, and then I got you, and that you are a person and not a automatic artificial intelligence. Really, that looks like a great robot. No. Okay. You mentioned fire. I've always wondered about fire retardants, because you see them spray the red foam or powder, whatever it is, over vast stretches of the forest. Does that percolate down into the aquifer?
It can. I think they've transitioned away from using a lot of the chemicals that used to be harmful that were in those. But what we can still see take place, it is a more immediate concern, is when they're spraying, like say Lake Oroville or Clear Lake over in Lake County. The immediate runoff at the first rain event can introduce phosphates into the water, which can become a food source for algae. And some of that algae can be really harmful. And so I think that's really what we try to keep it on. If we've had fires in and around our service area, especially in our Oroville district, we use water from Lake Oroville, treat it. Same thing with Lake County. We have a service area in Lucerne on the north side of Clear Lake, and those algal blooms can get really ugly. And so we want to make sure that we're monitoring that we're prepared if we know there's going to be kind of a high nutrient loading coming in that's going to propel that algal growth, and take the necessary steps on our end to be prepared to deal with it once it actually occurs.
Is there a way to get rid of that algae bloom?
We filter it out now. As far as getting rid of it in the lake, there are some processes that are out there, but they're expensive. And in a shared lake like that, it's kind of hard to coordinate a lake-wide approach when you have so many different entities and agencies that are pulling out of the same bowl. But yes, there are some things you can do. Aeration helps. There's other chemicals that you can use. But like I said, it is expensive, and it takes a coordinated approach to the health of the lake or the water body can be difficult to achieve.
So what does your family personally do to conserve water?
Well, we've cut back on the irrigation. We're abiding by the water use restrictions, and I've taken advantage of all the virtually all the rebate programs. I don't have a smart irrigation controller yet, but I am very, very on it. I get out there and I check my sprinkler system every weekend to make sure that I don't have anything flowing over onto the sidewalk or in a neighbor's property, that I don't have any leaks that I'm not aware of. And I think that's really important because a lot of people's irrigation comes on when they're still asleep. And they're not aware if there's a sprinkler head popped, So check it regularly. We have a conservation kit that we can send out to customers for free that includes 2 high efficiency shower heads, a hose shutoff nozzle, aerators for both your bathroom and kitchen faucets. That really helps. So I think it's just staying conscious of it. I've kind of made it a game with my kids. They're 7 and 10. Try to use as little water as possible when you're brushing your teeth. Try to take the shortest shower possible. Just kind of make it a game. The kids really seem to enjoy that, and when they understand how finite and precious a resource is, they really want to help. I think the younger you can get them thinking about it, the more benefit you're going to have in the long term. And we go out and we do classroom presentations. We have a really great program. It's called the H2O Challenge that we do throughout the state, where 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms can submit a project. We actually had the grand prize winner last year, I think, was from Sierra View Elementary School. And again, just this year, we had the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th place winners were all from Chico schools, from Sierra View, Little Chico Creek, and Parkview. So it's a great program. If they win the grand prize, they get like a 3-day camping trip down to Malibu.
It's kind of like a science project, kind of a contest.
Yeah, exactly. I think that some of them they've looked at recharge projects. They've done water quality testing. They've tried to do rain capture for a garden. There's the creativity in these projects is amazing. So just getting them thinking about it. And I think more so than just the prize. When you go in and you talk to the classrooms, and you get the feedback from the students on what they found important and what maybe they know now that they didn't know before. They all really understand the importance of this resource and how they can do stuff to help. Which I think is really impactful for kids, because they a lot of times feel like maybe they don't have a lot of say in what's going on out there. But this is a resource that we all use in our day-to-day life, and your everyday actions can help, can have a positive impact. So.
What about car wash places? It seems like they use a lot of water and with chemicals. So how is that processed?
So there is a regulation, I think, from the state that any new car wash facility has to recycle their water for their own internal use. I'm not sure the exact mechanism they use for filtering and treating that water when they reintroduce it into their process. But yeah, that is recycling their own water to cut down on their consumption.
And are laundromats the other source of big blasts of water use?
Yeah, I mean, we have some. I don't think that they're outrageous. I think a lot of those, especially those commercial washing machines, are extremely efficient. And we do have rebates on the commercial end too that can help with those things, not just the residential side. So for larger industrial units. So I would encourage folks that, if you own a laundromat, check out our website. We might be able to help you there too. But most of the water use is from outdoor irrigation. I'd say about 60%.
Is there anything else that you'd like people to know about water use or cow water or anything we haven't touched on?
Yeah, well, I know you touched on the restrictions and us going around and trying to punish people, and we have not issued any fines here yet. We have issued a number of warnings. And going back to the last drought, my role during the last drought was actually the conservation coordinator for Northern California, and I was out, driving around, and we did fine people. But we do have a mechanism where if you are fined, you can participate in the smart landscape irrigation tune-up program that we mentioned at no cost, and we'll reverse that first $50 fine. But we really don't want to focus on penalizing people. We want to focus on education,
motivating them,
making sure they're aware. And we've done a great job of that. Like, if we go back to how much water the average customer was using here in Chico in the year 2000 to 2020, they've cut it by 36%.
Wow.
Which is amazing. So I know we're coming back and asking for more conservation, and I really appreciate how motivated our customers have been to do so. We're getting really close to that 15% target that the governor has set. But we gotta also appreciate the efforts that people have done going back for the last 20 years to cut their consumption. 36% is huge.
And that doesn't include ag use.
No, that's just for Cal Water customers here in Chico.
Where do the big ag orchards get their water? From wells?
In Butte County, primarily it's wells. There is a little bit of surface water, but not much. It's almost all groundwater.
And you don't have anything to do with regulating them?
We don't. We don't provide any water to agricultural users. It's all domestic, industrial, institutional, commercial. But yeah, no ag.
Any dreams you had, like if you had unlimited money, something you'd like to do that you haven't been able to do now that you're a district manager?
There has been a lot of talk about bringing surface water down into Chico because we are on groundwater to help kind of alleviate our reliance on that resource. However, that is a big capital undertaking, and there's a lot of, we would have to have a wastewater treatment plant. We would have to figure out a way to get it from Lake Oroville if we wanted to use the Butte County's Table A water to supplement our groundwater supply here. So that's probably kind of the pie in the sky one to give us more redundancy on our supply. That, if I had unlimited resources, that's probably where I'd be putting my efforts.
So would that be like Feather River water?
Yeah, Feather water that's coming down from the Feather River, held in Lake Oroville before it, is sent back down further down the line.
Well, the people south wouldn't like that, would they?
Well, that's water. Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over, right?
That's a great note to end on.
That's Mark Twain. That wasn't me.